Well, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. We've got a lot of information to go through today, guys. I was trying to make it a short video. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it. We're going to talk about some information which was dropped in the posts, which came out last night. And also, since I put the video together, a new post has also hit the board, so we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to dissect some information from the Palpatine's Revenge chat log that we were given again last night on the post, and we've got some new information coming out from the White House. They want intelligence agencies to comb over private communications between the WHO and the CCP to see what they knew and when. So there's also probably going to be some other stuff. I don't know if I'm going to have time, but please do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor. Franklin's Finest Coffee is the first ever emergency survival coffee with an actual up to 25-year shelf life. The kit provides a 1-year supply of flavorful Franklin's Finest coffee for one person. It's conveniently packaged in 12 resealable, 60-serving, heavy-duty 4-layer zipper pouches for a total of 720 servings. It's all packaged in a rugged, water-resistant bucket for easy storage, and Franklin's Finest Coffee is the ultimate survival perk, especially for those that drink coffee on a daily basis. Or you can take it camping. It's 100% Colombian, and it's also the perfect item for barter or trade in an emergency. You'll thank us later for that tip. As Benjamin Franklin said, among the numerous luxuries on the table, coffee may be considered as one of the most valuable. It excites cheerfulness without intoxication, and the pleasing flow of spirits which it occasions is never followed by sadness, languor, or debility. All right, guys, first of all, a quick retraction from yesterday. I was reporting on 2 Michigan articles which stated that the state of emergency was going to be ending on April 30th. Well, several people got a hold of me and let me know that, in fact, the stay-at-home order has been extended until May 15th. Now, the state of emergency and the stay-at-home order are those 2 separate things. I know that Governor Gretchen Whitmer was seeking to extend the stay-at-home order for another 70 days, and apparently the GOP legislature shot her down, but it looks like we are going to have this lockdown continue, in Michigan at least, until May 15th. Thank you to everyone who brought this to my attention, and thank you to TikTok for the screen grab. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First big news of the day that I want to discuss, we have this tweet from Jennifer Franco. She says, the White House orders intelligence agencies to comb through communication intercepts, human source reporting, satellite imagery, and other data to establish whether China, the CCP, and the WHO initially hid what they knew about the emerging CV-19 pandemic. Now, she has an article here from NBC News. Let's take a look. Now, it continues. A specific tasking seeking information about the outbreak's early days was sent last week to the National Security Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency, which includes the National Center for Medical Intelligence. An official directly familiar with the matter has reported this. Also, the clowns in America have received similar instructions, but I doubt they're going to get on top of it too quickly. Now, President Trump appeared to refer to this request at his news conference on Monday. He said, "We're doing very serious investigations. We are not happy with the whole situation because we believe it could have been stopped at the source, it could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world." Now, as part of this tasking, intelligence agencies were asked to determine what the WHO knew about the 2 research labs studying CV-19 in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the virus was first initiated. NBC has previously reported that the spy agencies have been investigating the possibility that the virus accidentally escaped from one of those 2 facilities, although many experts are not on board with the idea. Now, this coincides with a public effort by the White House, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and President Trump's political allies to focus attention on that country's inability to contain the virus shortly after it emerged. The idea that the CCP and China were initially aware of this situation far earlier than they previously admitted would lay blame at their feet, considering the fact that it spread all over the world and caused not only a physical and medical, but economic disaster in many different places. President Trump said the United States is thoroughly investigating this matter, understanding the origins of the situation is important to help the world respond to this pandemic, but also to inform rapid response efforts to future infectious disease outbreaks. Now, of course, the clowns in America declined to comment. An official from the DNI said, "We are not aware of any such tasking from the White House," and a person close to the president has said the president is now running against China as much as anyone else. I would say that that is pretty much the case. President Trump has had his entire administration thrown into chaos as a result of this situation, and that was exactly what they wanted. Now, I want to take it back to one of the posts that came out last night, because I think it illuminates some of the reasons why we're in the situation we are today. Now, here in post 4003, we have what is a quote from Henry Kissinger. He says, "Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they would be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the world government." Now, this quote is from 1992. He was speaking at an organization of global leaders, and it starts with the B and ends with the Berg. And the post says, "Why do they want you locked inside? Why do they want you to panic? Why do they want you to live in fear? Why is the media banning anyone who changes the CV-19 narrative? This has everything to do with the presidential election. Who benefits the most? Logical thinking. All assets deployed. Win by any means necessary." We've talked many times about the planned nature of this situation. The fact that the country it originated in was well aware of it before they ever allowed anyone to get the information. They did not want it to stop. They wanted to make sure that it was able to spread because they knew the situation that we would be in here in the United States. It would be necessary to lock down the country, what with President Trump being told that 2.2 million Americans might lose their lives if we did something else. So, why is this happening? Because they want to make sure they win the presidential election. We know about the connections between this country right here, China, the infiltration instead of invasion that we've been putting up with for many, many years, their cozy relationships with certain lawmakers and even governors of the 50 states. In order for this country to win this war, this silent war, they're going to need to remove the only person who could stop them, which is President Trump. It is vitally important that we get out of this lockdown. President Trump must be reelected, and if we are forced to remain in our homes, having our rights violated and our Constitution trampled upon, then we are one step closer to their goal of having a mail-in ballot election, which will allow them to steal it. Now, also in that post is a tweet from New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, a message to Jewish community members there in New York, saying that he has instructed the NYPD to summon or even arrest people who gather in large groups. This is a threat which is designed to obviously maintain the lockdown and keep people in their homes and give them the fear of God, that if they go out and if they gather with people, they're going to find themselves locked in a jail cell. Now, what's interesting is that this was in response to a funeral which had been planned by the NYPD with this community, and it had been approved, but even knowing that, Bill de Blasio still sent the NYPD in there to break it up and to arrest people. This is just one more of their fear tactics that they're using to try to maintain the lockdown and keep people inside. Now, some of the information we were given in the post last night was in reference to private communications between people like George and China and the Dims and the Deep State. They're using video game chats so that they can stay outside of traditional signals intelligence collection. Well, in 2017, an example of one of these chats was published, and it was from a communication service called Glyph. What these people did is they had it installed on their computers at a given time on a given day. They would log in, and then they could communicate about things that they were planning on doing. Now, this article right here is from All News Pipeline, and it was published shortly after the publishing of that chat log back in May 19th of 2017. It's entitled Deep State Private Chat Intercepted, Exposes a Coup Attempt Against America by Intelligence Community Members. Now, on May 17th of 2017, the person who published this stuff was called Fresh Camel. They posted messages on several forums across the dark web, and they asked for help deciphering this discussion that had been intercepted, and it was apparently between 5 people communicating using that chat form called Glyph. Now, here is the chat itself. It's entitled Palpatine's Revenge. Someone named Dooku joined the group. I don't know if that is the person that had the communications intercepted on their computer, but they are talking about people using initials and also using the full name Mueller right there. They refer to someone named RR. It's very likely that's Rod Rosenstein. They refer directly to Mueller. They name someone MF. That's probably Michael Flynn. They also say WH. That would be the White House, and they refer to an incident with Erdogan. They ask about having S draw up a memo on Turkey. Now, they also refer to someone named the Limey. Evidently, their work with the Limey is paying off. And then they talk about someone named AEWP. They also refer to Camp Eagle, they refer to GT Outpost, but the most important aspect here is that they also refer to the appointment of Robert Mueller before it actually happened. Now, this is at around 3 p.m. on May 17th. Mueller was appointed later that day, and then it was announced the next day. But they definitely say that RM is happening tonight, so they'll have plenty of cover. They also reference potentially a tip to RM. If that is Robert Mueller, that would be something that fits, but also, a tip to RM could be a tip to Rachel Maddow to leak that to the public. All right, and then they say today's time is up. Everyone knows what to do. Tomorrow will be a busy day for all. So we'll let everyone know time when S hears from the grapevine. So S could be Peter Strzok. I think it's very likely it's Peter Strzok. I believe we know who AEWP is. And then I also believe we know who the Limey is. Now, the one question that I had initially when I saw this was, who is Fresh Camel? Now, shortly after the chat logs were released, the Third Estate News Group were actually able to make contact with Fresh Camel. Now, when they got a hold of Fresh Camel, they were able to ascertain that Fresh Camel was, in fact, the person who initially started spreading these chat logs around the dark web, and several hours before Robert Mueller was appointed. Apparently, Fresh Camel was able to intercept these chat logs by hacking the computer of someone in the FBI. That is the report. Now, the Third Estate News Group spoke with Fresh Camel via an encrypted email service, and they confirmed that they had accessed the personal computer of an employee at the sometime around April 24th. The access was obtained through a falsified phishing email. They installed spyware on the employee's computer when it opened, but they declined to identify the actual individual other than saying that they are a higher-level employee at the Bureau. Now, Fresh Camel stated that the individual's computer was used to join a secured chat channel on Glyph approximately 4 times a week for exactly 45 minutes each session, and that their activity had increased in recent days. But for weeks, Fresh Camel had casually monitored these chats without realizing what they were. But when the topic of discussion showed up on Wednesday, and it became a major news story, they decided to seek help to see if they could find out any additional information. Now, the chat is approximately a 45-minute chat log from Wednesday, May 17th. It begins with the mention of RR and Mueller just hours before Mueller was appointed, stating that it would blindside the White House. They refer to MF, Michael Flynn, saying that they're going to put him back in the news. Well, on Thursday of that week, a major story broke that former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had accepted money from the Turkish government. Now, the chat continues to talk about a Limey, which is a term for a British citizen, and in recent months, former British Member of Parliament Louise Mensch had captivated the internet with reports and leaks that often were proven to be false. Now, the Third Estate News Group was also able to ascertain that Michael Flynn and Louise Mensch had been topics of conversation in the past. Now, they also refer to AEWP. I believe I know who AEWP is. Right here is a former reporter for the Washington Post named Adam Entous. Adam was a writer on national security and foreign policy and intelligence issues, and you can see here from a brief listing of several articles he wrote for the Washington Post. He wrote about the Russiagate incident. He wrote about Russia itself. He also wrote about Michael Flynn. So I think it's very likely that AEWP is Adam Entous. And I should note, he currently works for the New York Times. Now, this right here is an archive of different posts related to Fresh Camel on Poll, just posts that reference Fresh Camel. Fresh Camel had been the topic of conversation on many different boards in many different places, and the identity of Fresh Camel was apparently revealed. Right here, this post is from Infinite Chan before it went down. It says, "The storm cannot be stopped at this time. We've got Geodis, the armed forces, Assange, 17, Manning, Fresh, Camel, all working towards a common goal." So this is the first post that I've seen that refers to Chelsea Manning as Fresh Camel. And I want to thank Tootsie Poo for sending this over. And here is another post from Infinite Chan, and it says, "I posted this earlier this evening, but then our favorite Anon came along. Fresh Camel equals Chelsea Manning, according to Mega Anon months ago." Mega Anon was another anonymous leaker that had been posting on boards prior to our favorite Anon showing up. Now, this right here is a report that Chelsea Manning has again been hospitalized after attempting to take her own life. I thought this was very interesting that this came out today after the posts highlighting the work of Fresh Camel arrived just yesterday on the board. So, is Chelsea Manning Fresh Camel? Are they the same person? I don't know, but this is pretty compelling. Now, back to All News Pipeline right here. They state that the reference to Camp Eagle, which the user Roger called an asset. And in the intelligence community, obviously, an asset is someone within organizations or countries being spied upon who provide information for an outside spy. They are sometimes referred to as agents, and in law enforcement parlance, as confidential informants, or CIs for short. We know that they had confidential informants hidden within the Trump transition team and within the Trump administration. So there's a number of people that Camp Eagle could be referenced to. Now, with regards to S as Schiff or Struck, TikTok here on Twitter put this together. He's saying that it's likely that S equals Schiff because just about a month later, Adam Schiff put together this press release and essentially wrote a memo with the incident that took place with the Turkish leader Erdogan and his bodyguards. On the same day that this conversation took place, there was an incident in Washington, D.C., where some bodyguards for Erdogan seemed to attack some Kurdish protesters that were there to protest his arrival in Washington, D.C. and his meeting with Donald Trump. So here we have Turkey talked about in the chat logs, and then we have Schiff, could be S, writing the memo and having the press release just about a month later. So in the post yesterday, in addition to the chat logs from 2017 in regards to Palpatine's Revenge, which is a Star Wars reference, we also have reference to another Star Wars game, Star Wars Commander, which coincidentally is going to be shutting down in the next 2 months. Now, back in December of 2019, this game was brought to our attention as a potential method for communications to be used by these people so that they could be outside of traditional signals intelligence capture. And I want to show you that Star Wars has been a recurring theme throughout this saga. Now, I'm sure that everyone remembers this New York Times article entitled "James Comey Would Like to Help," and here he is seated in his bay window with a bunch of Star Wars toys all lined up around him. At the time that this came out, there was quite a bit of conjecture as to what that could mean. This does seem to be the setup for the grassy knoll, I heard that, but it could also just be as simple as pointing to the Star Wars communication channel that they had. Now, also from Methods and Tootsie, James Comey had tweeted out not that long ago about a game called Camel Cup or Camel Up. And I thought that it was interesting that this is a reference to Camel, and that original chat log was released by Fresh Camel. Now, some clever Anons yesterday were able to piece together that at the time the chat went down in Star Wars Commander, it was curiously coinciding with some tragic events taking place throughout this country. We have 3 instances right here. Now, I also noticed that the date after the chat log ended for the Palpatine's Revenge chat log, there was another such incident that took place in Santa Fe on May 18th of 2017. Now, does that mean that it is connected in the same way? Not necessarily, but it is a curious connection nonetheless. Now, my friend Luke Slytalker on Twitter had a theory as to why the chat logs would go down. He said, "You know I have something on this. Star Wars chat goes down to coincide with FFs. Hypothetical. Request sent, received, confirmed. Chat feature is taken down to purge database. Scrub the interaction. Need to restart for changes to take effect." It's like a job board. So perhaps an order was given, the chat log goes down in order to scrub any of the communications that took place, and then there is essentially no record of what was happening. However, there is an interesting article that Method sent over from 2013, which says that maybe they actually were able to capture the communications. So from Eurogamer, back in December 10th of 2013, it was reported that the NSA and GCHQ can listen to Xbox Live chat communications. So if they had the ability back in 2013 to listen in on these chat communications on Xbox, I would imagine they would also have the same abilities on regular chat logs in other places on the internet, other games, and I would think that probably, if I had to guess, I'd say they have everything. Now, back to the posts. In post 4002, we're given an article from Niche Gamer about how George S. sunk $45 billion into Activision Blizzard. Remember that Star Wars Commander is shutting down entirely, so they wouldn't be able to use that anymore. And it states dates are important. The original Star Wars Commander drop was on December 16th, and then after that, it was announced it would be closing. Coincidence? Then George invests on February 14th in Blizzard. Is that a coincidence? Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, and then we're asked, why do you expose what you know publicly? Because it's no longer expedient to keep it quiet, because they've already used the information to create indictments, to summon grand juries, and to get the charges brought against whoever it is that was breaking the law. So why do I say they have everything? Because I think we've just been told. Now, the final and most recent post is a redrop of this PDF on the U.S. Government Counterinsurgency Guide from January 2009, right after the most recent president before President Trump came into office. And there is a passage selected from it in the post. Let's take a look. We're told to read slowly and carefully. Knowledge is power. What we're about to see is essentially their playbook and the way that they've been operating here in the United States during what is essentially a counterinsurgency attack upon our U.S. government and our president. Irregular warfare is far more varied than conventional conflict, hence the importance of an intellectual framework that is coherent enough to provide guidance and flexible enough to adapt to circumstances. American counterinsurgency practice rests on a number of assumptions: that the decisive effort is rarely military, although security is the essential prerequisite for success; that our efforts must be directed to the creation of local and national government structures that will serve their populations and, over time, replace the efforts of foreign powers; that superior knowledge, and in particular, understanding of the human terrain, is essential; and that we must have the patience to persevere in what will necessarily prove to be long struggles. Insurgency, however, can and will flourish in the modern environment. The strains created by globalization, by the collapse of weak state structures, by demographic, environmental, and economic pressures, by the ease of cooperation among insurgent groups and criminals, and the appearance of destructive radical ideologies, all augur a period in which free and moderate governance is at risk. Insurgency is the organized use of subversion and violence to seize, nullify, or challenge political control of a region. As such, it is primarily a political struggle in which both sides use armed force to create space for their political, economic, and influence activities to be effective. Insurgency is not always conducted by a single group with a centralized military-style command structure, but may involve a complex matrix of different actors with various aims, loosely connected in dynamic and non-hierarchical networks. To be successful, insurgencies require charismatic leadership, supporters, recruits, supplies, safe havens, and funding, often from illicit activities. They only need the active support of a few enabling individuals, but the passive acquiescence of a large proportion portion of the contested population will give a higher probability of success. This is best achieved when the political cause of the insurgency has strong appeal, manipulating religious, tribal, or local identity to exploit common societal grievances or needs. Insurgents seek to gain control of populations through a combination of persuasion, subversion, and coercion, while using guerrilla tactics to offset the strengths of government security forces. Their intent is to usually protract the struggle, exhaust the government, and win sufficient popular support to force capitulation or political accommodation. Consequently, insurgencies evolve through a series of stages, though the progression and outcome will be different in almost every case. Infiltration, not invasion. This is exactly what we've seen take place here in the United States, and the tactics they've been using are laid out quite succinctly in this portion of that PDF that we just saw. Absolutely, my friends, right now we are in the midst of irregular warfare, and we all need to be on guard. Alright guys, pretty neat to get an inside look at the way these people communicate and also the tactics they use to operate. My hope is that by having this knowledge, you can use it to better arm yourselves against these tactics as they are used against you. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, one more thing. It's Red Pill. I just want to say thank you once again to everybody that has helped to support the channel. If you'd like to get involved, you can go ahead and check the show notes in the pinned comment and the description. There's always good information in there. I've got a couple of backup channels. I ask that you go ahead and subscribe to them because if anything does happen here, I will start publishing there. And if you want things like merchandise or anything else, there is a bunch of information that you can find right below this video. Alright guys, thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.